Red Glass by Laura Rousseau, Chapter 17, Section 3. Nearly everyone held bundles or children or babies in their laps. A few held chickens. People squeezed inside the bus, 4 and 5 people to seats that were made to hold 2 or 3 school children. This bus was not as luxurious as the one I'd taken here, not by a long shot. This one had torn plastic green seats, ragged curtains, no AC, and no action movies. The bags were strapped onto the top of the bus. I hadn't wanted to part with my backpack, but there wasn't enough room inside. It was still early morning and I was already sweating. I ate one of the bananas Marta had packed for me. Outside, mist rose off trees and green hills like steam over a cup of tea. After half an hour, I got off at the town where I'd have to transfer buses. It wasn't much of a town as far as I could tell, just a mosaic of mud and dust and colored tarps strung over wooden market stands heaped with fruit and vegetables. Vendors fanned flies away from raw meat and wet cheeses and bowls of bubbling soups. Through air thick with odors of overripe fruit, people called out to one another. Kids screeched and laughed. Cumbia music pulsed. Sweat poured down my cheeks and plastered my clothes to my skin. I realized suddenly I'd forgotten to get my bag off the bus. But now I couldn't remember which bus was mine. There were 7 or 8 buses parked in a stretch of dirt, all old and painted crazy colors and packed with bags on top. What did I have in my backpack anyway? I mentally rummaged through the bag. There were clothes, but at least not my white dress. I was wearing that. Soap and shampoo and moisturizer and sunscreen, which I could replace, although it wouldn't be hypoallergenic. The little print book, dog-eared and underlined and worn. A little piece of Pablo I'd brought with me. Still, I could buy a new one back home. What was in the outside pocket? My passport. My stomach jumped. How could I get back into Mexico? And Mr. Lorenzo's and Angel's papers. How would they get back? I started aimlessly weaving through the exhaust and yellow buses, scanning their roofs. That was when a young guy in a threadbare t-shirt and flip-flops worn down to paper-thin soles jogged toward me. He held out my red backpack. "Gringa, is this yours?" I felt like hugging him. "Thank you." "No problem," he said, and before I could say anything else, he disappeared into the chaos of smells and sounds and colors. I wondered what it would be like to live here. It seemed very random that I ended up born in Tucson instead of here, instead of anywhere for that matter. And very random that my clothes were brand new while the guy's shirt had looked about 15 years old. If I lived here, he could be my friend. Marta could easily be my aunt. Dika could be Rodrigo's great aunt. Anyone could be anyone else. "Ahorita, gringuita." Any minute now, little gringa. That was the answer all the vendors gave me when I asked what time the next bus to San Juan would leave. I waited a few minutes and ate another banana and watched 2 little kids chasing each other around the market stands, squealing and slipping on mango peels. They wore filthy clothes about 3 sizes too big for them. "World's greatest grandma," one of the t-shirts said. The other had dancing pigs on it and said, "I live for aerobics." 10 minutes passed, but no bus. I had to pee badly. I asked another vendor, "When will the bus to San Juan leave?" "Ahorita, gringuita," the woman answered. "Do you know when exactly?" 5 minutes? 45 minutes? "Yes, señorita," she smiled reassuringly. "But which one? 5 or 45? "Ahorita viene." Any minute now. Half an hour passed. Still no bus. I peeked looked over into a ditch to see about peeing there, but there was a drunk guy passed out by a tree. I returned to the woman's fruit stand. Is there a bathroom here? I asked her. With an apologetic shrug, she pointed to a cement building with baños spray painted on the side. I opened the door and walked inside. In seconds, my eyes adjusted to the darkness. Mounds of crap were piled up inside the toilets, on the floor next to the toilets. Thick clouds of flies buzzed everywhere. The stench was horrible. For a germ freak like me, this was straight out of a nightmare. I froze, afraid to breathe. I looked down and saw on the floor brown liquid that could have been mud or worse, and it was all over the soles of my sandals. I couldn't move. My heart stopped. I opened my mouth, but instead of a scream, a laugh sputtered out, and another. Uncontrollable belly laughter overtook me. I was doubled over, laughing and laughing until tears streamed down my cheeks. I'd spent my whole life worrying about germs, and here I was in the mother lode, and well, I wasn't dead. I tiptoed out, careful not to splatter the puddles. Still laughing, out in the sunshine, I gasped the sweet air and ran down to the ditch past the drunk guy. I hoped he wouldn't regain consciousness anytime soon. I peed in the midst of dirty diapers and plastic bottles and cans faded from the sun. I peed, then laughed some more while I examined the brown stuff on my shoes. The thought of Dika with her head thrown back, shrieking with laughter, because what else could she do? Because she was alive. No, of course, the bus is fine, the driver reassured passengers while sipping his beer. The hood was up and two guys were peering into the engine. People streamed onto the bus, women clutching the tiny hands of their children, some children with babies strapped to their backs, guys in baggy jeans and t-shirts and baseball caps, older men in once white Oxford shirts with graying collars and woven palm hats. Once we were all settled in our seats, a man in a grease-stained clothes told us to get off again. We watched the men tinker underneath the hood for a while until they shrugged and declared it was okay. I wondered if it was really okay. Then I smiled because, of course, if a crash was going to happen, it would happen in an ancient second-hand school bus speeding along dirt roads with a beer-drinking driver. No, it was not an ideal situation, but the best option at the moment. A boy on a ladder tossed my bag up top, and then I got on the bus. This time, more passengers rushed onto the bus, packing the seats. I had to stand in the aisle, my feet apart, bracing my hands on the seat back and the bar overhead. A few men offered me their seats, but I said no thanks. Plenty of other people were standing, and if they could do it, so could I. I felt glad I was standing because I felt taller, as if my whole life I'd let fear cram me into a small box, a space so tiny I was always curled over, my shoulders hunched, my back bent. That box had seemed too strong to break through, so I hadn't tried before. But maybe, all along, the box was just flimsy cardboard, and all I had to do was stand up, punch through the top, and climb out.